Instagram. We are live for Stephon Clark Sunday with a special conversation with Mr. Clark. And we're going to be talking about voting rights. We're going to be talking about the criminal justice system. And this is how we commemorate the life and legacy of my dear brother, Stephon Alonzo Clark, in a positive light so that his name may live on for generations and generations and generations, long, long, long after you and I have left this earth. First, the number one enemy to our democracy at this point, if you ask a lot of people, would be the not the Democratic, but the Republican Party. Republicans at a state level who are proposing and passing regressive voting laws that will disenfranchise primarily voters of color and disempower local election boards. Very important. It is the Republicans in Congress who refuse to help defend those voting rights, the same voting rights Dr. King fought so hard for in 1965 and before that. They want a different electorate. They want less black and more beige. They want less people that look like me and you, that are on the right side of justice. Second, the president is not a member of Congress. We must understand this completely. The president has no vote there. The president might have a little influence there, but he has no, and I mean no, power or vote there. He cannot single-handedly alter a vote or any congressional policy beyond the veto. Yet for all that, it is still important to recognize that Biden has consciously chosen not to use the full force of the bully pulpit to explicitly and repeatedly call for the protection of voting rights. And therefore, our democracy, by any, and in the great words of my great role model, Malcolm X, by any and all means necessary, including the elimination of the filibuster. My special guest today knows a lot about your rights. If you ever in a friction with law enforcement, he knows a lot about the law. You know, you cannot fight the suppressive system if you don't know the rules and conducts of the system, if you don't know the laws. Thurgood Marshall says, laws don't only have the power to change the way structures are governed, but they also have the power to change the hearts and minds of men. So we have to keep that in our heads. And that's Thurgood Marshall. Before there was Ben Crump, before there was Johnny Cochran, there was Thurgood Marshall, our first Black Supreme Court justice, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. But anyways, we're going to bring in my favorite attorney here in the state of California. He's a Black man, of course. We're going to bring in my favorite and the only lawyer you need to be talking to if you're in any problem in the state of California. This guy knows what he's talking about. I love him. He's a brother of the movement. He's who I call when it comes to know your rights campaigns and so on and so forth. So our special guest today is law attorney Keith J. Staten. I want to bring him in right now, and here we go. Thanks for joining us, Keith.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me in this special Stephon Clark Sunday.
Yes.
And before I gave a little bit of introduction of you, but can you introduce yourself to the people? Let them know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Keith Staten, and I'm an attorney here in Sacramento. I do criminal defense. I've been doing it for about almost 30 years now. I have a podcast that I'll mention later that we do. I've represented and done a lot of cases here in Sacramento of all kinds, from homicide on down to petty theft and things like that. I've been a member of the organizations such as Wiley Manual Bar Association and other community organizations. And I have a thing about knowing your rights. I do lectures, and I'll do anything to inform the public about their constitutional rights and how to stay alive when you're dealing with police officers. I try to speak as much as possible on that because I believe that the power for the future and the change is going to be our education and then exercising our power through the vote.
Amen. I agree. Exercising our power to the vote. And that leads me into our next conversation. Let's talk about this voting laws, the way they're doing things in Atlanta. On August 28th, there is a huge march on Washington led by the Reverend Al Sharpton and Dr. Martin Luther King III. How important do you think this march is when it comes to getting actionable items done on the congressional floor?
Well, look, all marches have been done in order to make an appearance, to make somebody know that they're stepped through the door. The March on Washington a long time ago, Million Man, you name it, the Women's March, all of them. They're just there to make people understand that you're out here. So that, for that purpose, it's beautiful and it does what it's supposed to do. Now, the biggest thing I always worry about is that whether people are going to be amenable or wanting to have the education it's going to teach, and then exercising what we learn. So it's going to be important.
I agree. So the next action item, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it some more. The voting rights. Like you said, we've seen the Million Man March. We've seen the Women's March. We've seen the March in Washington. We've seen even the March in Washington in 2020.
Yeah, true.
We've done this for accountability and justice and all types of things. And yet we continue to see cops kill unarmed African Americans. After 1965, we continue to see voter rights being suppressed. We can continue to see it harder for our people in our communities to get to these voter polls and make it on time. And you see actual cases of women being back incarcerated and men as well, because they didn't know they couldn't vote under a felony. When then you have people who storm the Capitol get away with nothing and no consequences at all. Can you speak about that a little bit?
All right, you said a lot. But I'm gonna try to deal with it historically and how you brought it about. Look, what we've all got to realize and got to know is that laws do change minds of men, but laws are also there to enchain people too, okay, and keep people down. So everyone, you got to take yourself back to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, and when they were passed, we became free, a citizen, and we could vote, Black people in this country. 13th, 14th, 15th, all done in succession pretty much. And it was supposed to fulfill the whole we the people and everybody equal and all that kind of stuff. But we know what happened was post-slavery, and that's when those came out. They began a campaign in the Reconstruction period of creating laws that now would make Black people just standing on the corner or not doing anything, not having a job, a criminal. And when you're made a criminal, then they can incarcerate you and they can use you for your labor. We see that in the 13th Amendment today, and there's movements to get rid of that in the 13th Amendment. If you are duly convicted of a crime, then you can work for free for the state. So we saw that happening, and we saw how even though slavery was over, and even though we as a people were starting to build our own communities and things like that, that now new laws were causing incarceration in a mass amount. Now we've seen that today and stuff. So history's repeating itself. But what happens here is, and I'm taking you now into the 20s and 30s, the Tulsa thing has occurred, which is weird that a lot of people didn't understand about that. But you got to understand there were several Tulsas, lots of neighborhoods and towns and cities where Blacks were on their own because they were left on their own. And with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments passed, we were electing people into city councils, into government, into the Congress, all of that at that time. So the vote obviously is powerful, and holding power is the key. So we saw this rage of violence come with the Red Summer in 1919 and then 1920. Tulsa, we started seeing shortly thereafter a lot of our communities being destroyed. And we started seeing laws being passed where we redlining, and we couldn't live in certain communities and things like that, even if you went north, from the South. And then we started seeing that voting rights were being stepped on. Now, dig this, and everybody can go back. Remember, they didn't give us the vote. Nobody voted for us to have the vote in the 60s. We were just fighting to get to vote because Jim Crow prevented that from happening. So all of Selma, the marches, they were beautiful and they were great. And it led to Johnson signing Voters' Rights Act. And I think simply because of Selma, and because at that time we started broadcasting things. It started going over into Europe and Asia and everywhere of what was happening on the streets of America for people who just want to vote, something they've been given way back 100 years before. So we saw that happen. We saw him sign the bill very quickly. And then we saw other restrictions being put into place. Oh, you can vote all right, but we might intimidate you and have some people sitting down there at the polls with rifles, and they may say, yeah, you just step on in here. Go on, just step up in here. Then we might intimidate you by giving you a test to tell us, name all the 50 or the presidents backwards and stuff, or some other tax that you got to pay $250. So they started putting in place these crazy illegal things to keep people from voting because it was still Jim Crow. We had no power whatsoever. So when Jim Crow allegedly ended, which it's hard to say because you had Brown versus Board, which was separate but equal, which was really back in the 50s, but nothing happened until the end of the 60s, so to speak. So everything was moving really slowly along this time. And they knew that we were now suppressed in terms of the vote because it's hard to build it back up after then. We started seeing mass incarceration. We started seeing the crack being thrown around. All these little things started happening to harm our communities, to keep us down. So now that we've shown that we can elect people, that we can do something with the vote, more suppression has to come. And it's just a habit of what seems to be the ruling government and the people who appear to be in charge, a habit of when we start flexing our power, that they start to snip our power again. So we have to be really careful and understand that this is something that, I can run around and say people died for it and you might not care, but that wouldn't mean it when my family died for it. But see, you got to worry about anybody dying for the right to vote because it's the power. And Malcolm will tell you, Mandela will tell you, every warrior will tell you, look at, even the Panthers, everybody will tell you that, the power and the vote, Bobby Seale, all of the Hampton, they will all say that is a power to grab. We should use that to the best of our ability. And it worked in Georgia when they won those 2 Senate elections. That was crazy and ridiculous. In the realm of this country's future. You see that? Whoa. And so that's when you started seeing heavily. And once Trump is out, heavily. Now pass laws. And it's all just to suppress us. That's it. So we got to understand the right to vote. Sorry for the whole history lesson. But
no. We need it.
The vote is so important. It really is.
And like you said, Fred Hampton would tell us the same thing. Bobby Seale would tell us the same thing. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. said, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And you see we get these laws passed, like you talking about the Brown versus Board, how it was passed in 1950s, thanks to Thurgood Marshall again, and how it was enacted in the 60s. It's crazy because back to Dr. King, when we say justice delayed is justice denied, this is what we're talking about. How can the Supreme Court pass something and then it not be enacted more than a decade later? So I think that we live in 2 different Americas at times, and it's up to us as the people to stand with each other, to stand with others, say, wait, this is wrong. This is wrong. And we're not going to stand we're not going to stand for this as an American people, an American people. And I think, when we see these atrocities happen across the country, that's why I thank you for that history lesson. I thank you for bringing us through, even when it pertains to the Jim Crow era and what, because people need to understand that this didn't just happen yesterday. This conversation on voting rights didn't just begin as Joe Biden got elected. I didn't mean to trash Joe Biden as I opened up. I didn't. That's not my intention. I love Joe Biden. Okay, it's just that I believe he can do a little bit more and further when it comes to sticking up for us when it comes to these voting rights. Moving on to the George Floyd Policing Act, okay? Now, the George Floyd Policing Act is big when it comes to the movement fight. As you know, Attorney Staten, that I do a lot of work when it pertains to the new civil rights movement. Yeah, and we got the Stephon Clark law passed, you remember. But the George Floyd Policing Act, what it does, it establishes a framework. This is people who don't know what it does necessarily at home. But what it does is it establishes a framework to prevent and remedy racial profiling by law enforcement at the federal, state, and local levels. Stephon Clark law was signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, and we believe when California sneezes, the rest of America catches a cold. So what the George Floyd Policing Act does is it limits the unnecessary use of force and restricts the use of no-knock warrants, chokehold, and courted holds. Would you like to speak on the work getting done when it comes to the George Floyd Policing Act, and if not, just speak a little bit on why this is so important, why we need to act on this more now than ever?
Yes. We got to view this act as allowing now police all over the country to have the same standard. So that's why it's important to pass it at a federal level, because then everybody underneath, all states and counties, have to follow it. That's one reason why it's vitally important, because each state can have different rules. The other thing that we got to look at here is why policing in general. Now, they're not going to, Maya Angelou said, if you can't change something, change yourself, so to speak. And so I look at policing in a whole different way sometimes. But as it pertains to this act, I think it does the things that we want it to do, but its problem is going to be politics. It's going to be getting it to pass without any tricks being done or anything being changed to it or amended to it. And so because it hasn't passed yet, it's telling you that there is extreme resistance, and it's just going to be a hard thing to do. Now, that being said, it's what it restricts, what it asks to do is great. But I think in terms of policing, there has to be a whole different view of it in a psychological way. We have individuals who will kill, who will beat, who will lie on camera, and, when the cameras are on. I mean, that's how we catch people now. And if you really go back and you think about it, 10 years ago when we didn't have body cams and cell phones everywhere, how are we learning about these things except for a dead body here and a dead body there? Police reports we know can be fake throughout the whole department. Things can be withheld. I just saw a video this morning, guy dropping dope in a man's car. I mean, and
the brother videotaped the thing, guys.
He videotaped. So imagine when we didn't have the videotapes. So we're seeing a lot of the dirt that they leave out there, and then their move has been, though, well, we're greater than thou. You can't cut us. You can't do this. We're gonna stop policing then and stuff. And then if you go ahead. They're not gonna do that. They're puffing and blowing, and they don't want anything to interfere with the way they've been doing things.
Yes,
and don't put our people in jail. Don't hold us accountable. No, they got to be accountable like any other person. One of the worst things in the world is this. How could I watch all the video of cops claiming to be acting in self-defense when you shoot a person and they're running from you? No, none of us would ever get away with that. I'm a best defense lawyer around, but that's going to be a hard one to say it's self-defense.
Yeah.
Okay. But they can say that. I was in fear for my life. He started running. I'm still in fear. Pow. And not be prosecuted. So when you see that on the raw facts of the law, you know something's wrong. They believe they are above it possibly, or that they should be above it. So if we can pass the George Floyd Act, please contact your congressmen, your senators, tell them to do it. But, that we have to tell them to do it is one of the problems.
Huge. And we shouldn't have to. You have to do that. We shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to be having this conversation right now. Honestly,
both sides of the aisle should agree with that.
Amen.
And
I'm glad you brought up that video. I'm so glad you brought that up. So when did you watch that video? When did you see it?
God, what was it? 5 this morning or something? I don't know.
Oh my gosh! So you just seen the video? Yeah. I watched it at least 10 times, Steve. I was so pissed off, and the brother. Thank God that brother captured that, right? because they was gonna get that brother if he didn't capture that. Oh, they couldn't wait to get him.
And that's not the first time. It's not the first time.
Oh, yeah.
All I do is collect these things. I got about 3 or 4 others. Yeah.
Gosh, what? And it's so sad that it happens, and I want to move on now to my next question about what we're seeing across America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because
you need the violence.
Yes, the violence,
the alleged violence, and
yes, I want to talk about that because over 1,000 people a year die by law enforcement here in the United States. In 1972, the year my mother was born, we had a prison population of 300,000. Today, we have a prison population of roughly 2.12 million. We are 5% of the world's population,
right?
Yet 25% of the world's prisoners.
Right.
They say the African American population in America is around 12 to 13%. Yet they say we make up over 30 to 40% of the prison population. What can we do actionable item-wise to not only reduce these numbers, but I want to say come up with solutions such as community policing or de-escalation tackle teams or neighborhood associations or youth-led neighborhood associations? What actionable items can we use that you think could help take us to this next era of justice and accountability? Because I think the civil rights movement have their own way of doing things.
Yes.
I think Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale, and those guys have their own way of doing things. I think the Nation of Islam have their own way of doing things. But what can we as a people together, despite political group, despite agenda, despite race, despite religion, what can we as a people do? Because as you know just as well as I do, that we Black people are the only people in America who are not immigrants. We're the only people in America that are sons of slaves. So I want to ask you, what do you think we can do before we hit that level? Because I believe love casts out fear. And there's a woman who attacked the bear because the bear touched her child. So what will we do? I don't want us to get there, amen. But I want to know what can we do to be in more solidarity with one vision and one common goal.
All right, now that's a deep question. Okay, but watch. I mean, I think about that all the time. Actually, the first place I go is this: when you said we are sons of slaves. Okay, because the history of the country is slavery. It wasn't an accident. It was a game plan. Someone had thought it out carefully.
Come on now.
And they had to bring a people from their foreign land to another place where they would be totally alienated, take away their whole tribal life, their relatives, their lineage, everything. Take it away completely, kill half of them on the trip. But when they get there, bring them to another place they have no idea of how to live, where to live, what plants grow, what animals live, anything like that. But yet, even worse, they are now enslaved. So they are using brutality to control their behavior.
Come on,
okay? So we start with that. And then we go, well, when they were thinking about that, because, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to start a country and everybody's free. Everybody's free, of course, right? And we're going to do this and do that. We're going to build a nation on freedom and all of that stuff. Now, if I'm building it on sand and it's supposed to be a castle, it's probably going to float away. Now, what they built it on was the backs of slaves. Okay, that was their economic game plan on how we were to get up, right? And it worked. It worked. I mean, 1600s, they were here experimenting even before Declaration of Independence. Think about that. How many years? 1619, right? How many years before 1776 that they were practicing this old slavery thing? And we know they got rich off of it then. It's just that the king had his hand in it.
Yeah.
And then the people said, you know what? I don't like the king having his hand in this shit no more.
That part. We're gonna do it.
Yep. And he can't come over here and whoop our ass. We're across the border.
That part.
He can't sustain that war. And now that we've been here 150 years with slavery, we got our own economic background going. We're strong enough to stand up on ourselves.
Come on now.
So they utilize that. Now realize land of the free, freedom to everyone, pursuit of happiness and all that stuff, except if you're a slave. So slavery continued, 1776 to when? 1865. So, wow, another 90 years or so. And even then, there was no game plan that said, we're going to end slavery and here's what we're going to do. We're going to give everybody their own country or their own land and everything, and we'll all live in harmony. If that's what the country was built on, then that's what we should have received.
Amen.
But we were, released as slaves. And it's funny because the Family Guy's got a little clip on this, on how he's comparing freeing the slaves, to such a minuscule type of duty, where he's just lets the cuffs go and go, okay, we good. Like, go do your thing. You're done. Stop being a slave. So and we built up stuff. We built our own country. We built our own places here. Then we fought in every war. We felt that we were part of this country. We felt that they would embrace us and stuff as a community. Like you say, just our communities. But it was them that had the Jim Crow that left us apart, forcibly, right? So we overcome that somehow, but then they really only did that, look at the 60s, okay? And then they had to do something. So they overturned that, but that's the thing, they had to, see? And at the time, the law did not change another's mind then. And it's like the Bruce Hornsby song, it just didn't, it doesn't change your mind just because you say people are equal. Even to this day, that's why we see violence randomly against Black people out there in the street, everywhere.
Because I want to add to that too.
Yeah.
It don't change the hearts of my own time, because Martin Luther King opposed so that he was hated. He was disliked by many Black Americans as he was on his way out before he died. So I'm gonna let you finish, but I just want to say that we all don't think the same.
Yeah, and so we're living it. We got this environment less than 100 years ago that's still trying to work its way out, and there are ramifications of slavery, the economic gap, between Blacks, white, the educational gaps, because of laws that were in place, and then when the laws went away, people just did it. You see, without any retribution. Like your bank, you didn't have to give me a loan in the 70s or 80s. Still, you could have made up something. But incarceration came, crack in the communities, because we saw how with Nixon and Ehrlichman, they knew Blacks are our enemies. We got to keep them down and infiltrate them so that they can never gain power. And it worked, because then you saw Michelle, right? Alexander talk about, mass incarceration. These tools were now used. These institutions were now used to actually work against us, the people who were free, who more than anybody earned their right to be here. So we move into the 90s, the 2000s now. Oh my God, that's your age. That's everybody. That's most people's age now. And what have we learned? What has happened? Well, we're still killing each other. We're still hurting each other. We usually can't get together. And I look at that and I go, well, that's the central problem, is that we don't move together as we did in the 60s. And I'll tell this, here's something I thought. Look, anybody who is over the age of 60 and you listening to this, or you ask anybody who's over the age of 60, how did Black people look at each other? How did they treat each other in the 60s? And they'll tell you it was a different way. We all were on the same team, so to speak. And now that from the 60s to now, what we've seen is this capitalism. We've seen greed. I got to have the man with the most chips win. And my diamonds, my stuff.
Come on. And what I noticed is that the church was leading a lot of things in the 60s. The church had a major foothold on our communities. And I think you see the church kind of, I don't want to say this post Billy Graham era where we have a lot of prosperity preachers and a lot of money coming involved in the church.
Right.
And I think we are seeing something that has never been seen before. The church has almost lost all influence on the front ground. Al Sharpton's a good guy, but Al Sharpton can't be out there alone, Jesse's a good guy, but Jesse's 80 years old. You know, he's getting awards in France by the French president Macron and all that. He's tilting there.
Yeah.
I think of the new civil rights activists, the new movement, who's going to take us there. Now, I don't think we've done it in a way where King mastered the organizational structure of things. King plotted, he planned, he centralized, he mobilized, he strategized, he organized, he weaponized. King had the collaborators. He was a phone call away from the White House. He could speak for the majority of the churches who would sign on to his letters, who would sign on to his acts and things. And what I see here in more coming towards, like you said, the 90s era, where we left off at, is that we've lost those leaders in that aspect to really speak on us as a whole. Ever since the church has lost as much influence in the social activism fight.
Yep.
I think the church used to be very involved in it in the 60s, which made us as a people more united. Can you finish speaking?
Oh, gosh, yes. How you think in the civil rights movement, King would get around without getting killed, or other workers would get around? We're coming to a community. Who's got a bedroom? Who's got a basement? Who's got an attic for these people to stay in? You see?
Well, yeah, we got Don. Don
Who's
says
got cars? Who's got cars we could drive people around in?
Mm-hmm.
See, they have to operate in a clandestine way, you know.
Yeah.
And they did it because of the love, I think, of each other. The love of each other, and knowing that we're all trying to get to the finish line. Like King said, he didn't say, I'm getting over there. He said, we're all going over into the promised land, you know, and that it won't be done until we all get across. So we're just slowing down right now, but you're right about the churches. You know, it always has been a money thing because, you know, the nonprofit status, and, you know, it's built on, you know, donations that someone doesn't really have to account for necessarily all the time. You know, the more flash, the better. We started getting these mega, you know, churches, you're right. And they're making a lot of money and jets and things. And so religion became just probably like a club to belong to and stuff, you know, when it used to be the real backbone. You're right. You know, meetings were there, done at churches, things like that. So leaders came out of the church, you know. They were educating at the church. Kids were going to college and stuff like that, you know, and people were helping them along. And that's the thing, is that we were helping each other. You know, if that family's suffering, everybody give them something.
Come on now.
And that's the way we looked at each other. But now we don't do it anymore, and we don't own anymore. You know, that's the part.
You preaching now?
We don't own our own land and stuff to do that. We don't own this. I mean, I don't own the tennis shoes I'm wearing because I took them from over there, you know? So, but yet that becomes a crime, and some man spending 15 years in prison, you know, you know, we got to really, really watch out right now. This is a time period where there's a thing to break us apart, you know?
No, I like how you said that. There's no unity anymore, and we don't own any of it. So this is what trips me out. Okay, you got black people. I love our people fighting over geographical locale, dying over geographical locale, killing kids accidentally and sometimes on purpose because of geographical locale. Yet we own none of the geographical locale that we are murdering each other, and it reminds me of the Willie Lynch syndrome. Willie Lynch came and did a powerful speech. Some whites, Europeans, and slave owners called it one of the greatest speeches that they've ever heard or seen written by any man. And it was how to break these people and to keep them divided. And he said, if it works, it'll work for the next 400 years if you do it effectively.
Yeah.
And 2019 would have been our 400.
Since which date? Yeah.
Yeah, since which time, right?
1865. Yeah, so still less than 200 years. So
and you look at this, right? We look at this miscarriage of justice, and we say, okay, if the Willie Lynch syndrome is working as it should, how come we haven't came together been able to crack the code? Have we been divided by money? Have we been blinded by activism or performative activism or clicktivism or slacktivism? Have we came to them terms where we think we're doing something because we're sharing the petition? Because we think we're doing something. So we're not looking. I think there's too many neighborhoods, not enough neighbors. Like you said, if I needed something in the 60s, you talk to anybody back then, I could come to you and talk to you. The relationship, the conversation between us as brothers and sisters were different. Most of us had aunties and uncles who served on the deacon boards. Most of our grandmothers came out of slavery. So I think we're looking at now is people aren't they're more concerned with the glitz and glam. They're more concerned with the materialistic and the selfish things. And I think our leaders talk about that materialism and individualism being the downfall of our people. And I think we're seeing that at an all-time high. Materialism, individualism, everybody wanting to be tough. And brothers, the first question you ask a lot of these young brothers, the first thing they ask is, where you from? They don't care about your characteristics. They don't care about what you do for a living, what you do for the community. The only time they do community service is when you have to talk to the judge about letting them off to do community service. Otherwise, they'll probably never do community service, So we got to get back into the community service, more unity in the community. So talk a little bit about that. My bad, man.
No. I mean, what you're saying is right, and this conversation is huge, but you're not going to hear it on any levels usually. Now, one of the things they have done to break us apart is they've taken individuals who are very, very well educated and they speak very well, and they put them up and they take a position that seemed to be against Black people. You see, individuals, I'll just say, who are out there that you will see on the internet, who will send you emails constantly to tell you to forget about this critical race theory. It's bad for you. You don't want your kids, Black kids, to know about it either. And it's the Democrats who are doing it to us. It's this socialism that's doing it to us. And they don't want us to know our history, I guess, or remember our history. But the problem is the Black struggle throughout the history is a tale of mankind. That's something that should be put up and applauded at all times. So why would they want us to forget about it or not?
Yeah, you don't suppress the history when it comes to Hitler and the Jews. You don't suppress the history when it comes to ancient China. You don't suppress the history when it comes to Japan. I mean, you suppress it to the part where you've killed off.
We enslaved people and bombed them.
Yeah. Come on now. You don't want to.
We made them grow. We made them grow.
Oh,
no, but you're right. See, and that's one of the problems. Is why would they want us to do it when our history is rich here? Our history is everything here, because any person living today, and I agree with white people, you didn't have nothing to do with slavery. It's not your fault because you didn't dream it up and create it. However, if you have the fruits of it,
you're living off that privilege.
Then you should care about where it came from, because if it's drug money, it's drug money. If it's bad money, it's bad money. So at least acknowledge.
You living off the drug money.
Well, that your history means that you benefited from it somewhat. If you are white here and you inherited land, inherited money, have opportunities. Period.
And that leads us to reparations.
Yes.
That leads us to reparations. Yes. I think that is if white people have it. They have to acknowledge it. Now we're on the conversation. My next question to you is, what does that look like, Keith? Keith, what does? Now we don't want to just go around handing all these Negroes checks. You see what the PPPs and stimulus checks did to these. We thought we get some checks, we'll be out. Nah, you see, everybody quit their jobs. Nobody going back to work. You know what I mean? Everybody owe everybody 5,000, 10,000. Everybody got nice cars.
Spinning wheels.
Come on now. Let's go. And we don't see in the business
liquor stores on every corner.
Let's go.
All right.
What does reparation look like? I talked to a congressman at the time. I don't know if he's still holding that seat, but his name is Ami Barrett.
Yeah.
And me and Ami Barrett was talking. He was in Elk Grove for an event. And I went, yeah, Dr. Ami Berra, and he has much love in his community. Yes, and I went out there to talk to him, and I asked him. I said, reparations, brother. What is We need to talk reparations. He said, that's really not my thing. But when it comes to reparations, the way it looks to me is new schools in those communities, new roads, more grocery stores and things, and not having those food deserts there and whatnot. More neighborhood community centers and whatnot. This is what reparations look like to him. To some people, it might look like cutting a check. To some people, it might be the implementation of more structures like Black Wall Street, having those types of communities back implemented because they were torn down by us to prevent us from growing communities like that in our communities. So I want to know, in your opinion, if America was to distribute reparations to the African American community for all the labor, all the work, all the miscarriages of justice, from redlining to 3/5 of a human being from voting, from slavery, from segregation, from Jim Crow to Brown versus Board, to Stephon Clark law, to George Floyd Policing Act, when it comes to reparations, to get things done, to repair some of the damage that has been done when it comes to the history of African Americans here in this country. Talk to us about it.
Okay. I'm glad you bring this up. This is a subject matter that gets confusing all the time. So the way I got to look at it is from where I've been trained, and that's, do I have a lawsuit? Well, if you hit me with your car, I would sue you, and somebody's going to pay, your insurance company or you, but somebody's got to pay. They may even convict you of a crime if you hit me, and then you will still have to pay. So this looks like it might be a lawsuit in a way, and that it's a tort, and that they have taken lives and destroyed property and things like that, held me in slavery so many years. So because of that harm, it's a class action, and it'd only be individuals who are descendants of slaves, and they would be the class that gets any recovery.
That's good.
Now, first, so liability, it seems clear. You did something, okay? Mm-hmm. Can't deny that. May want to forget it, but you can't deny it. Mm-hmm. Now, how did you do it? You did it with tools. You did it with the law. You did it with brutality. Mm-hmm. Bad. Now, we can't put you in jail, but we definitely can make you pay damages. So now we're down to damages. What should damages be? Well, yeah, let's cut a check for everybody. Let's try to figure out what it would take. How many of us are here? 13 million, right? Something like that. So right? If it's 13 million of us, give us all $1 million, maybe, and then we all go away. I mean, man, woman, child, so a family of 4 gets 13 million, 4 million. Now that'd be one way of dealing with it. And I'll tell you something. If they were really thinking, they'd go, yeah, it's 13 million of you. Hell, we'll give you 2 million apiece. And that's what? 26 million. That's a fighter jet. That's some military equipment. We'll pay you off. Now, you better not ever say anything about racism again. You better shut the hell up. Clean up your own community, because if you screw up now, I'm the other side. I'd take that. I'd settle that lawsuit. Here's 26 million. Go ahead. Goodbye.
You'll take we should all take $1 million.
No. Wait. I'm just saying, if I'm the lawyer on the other side and they came to me for reparations, I go, how many of you are there? Okay. 13 million? Well, we know it's probably a little bit less. Yeah. Okay. If I gave every person $1 million, right? That ain't nothing. It's going to be what? 1 point. It'll be about, let's see, if it was 13 million. If I did my math or something, right? It's going to be, I don't know, maybe $1 billion. I don't know, something like that. Mm-hmm. But even that is what we give a very small amount in foreign governments and jet pilots or jet planes. So you can make that money up so fast. I'd pay that check, and then they'd have to leave me alone. I'd never hear from it again, like any other lawsuit, right? Can't talk about it anymore. Yeah. I'd do that if I was on the other side, but that wouldn't do us any good, and we should never take that. What we should take is an offer of land. How about the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Barbados, any American territory owned? Because as we know, America doesn't really care about those territories.
No, they don't.
But
That part.
build the infrastructure for us, put an infrastructure there, and allow us to go there and own land.
Mm.
Now, allow us to govern ourselves on those islands so
Mm-hmm.
that we become the Black United States.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, come
So
on.
there's a new whole political thing that comes up. And well, who can we trade with? Everybody, especially
Mm.
Africa.
Mm.
Hello, South America, Asia. Can we get money to build ourselves over here? Because everybody wants a mansion.
Yes.
You see?
That
And now, what about our businesses? Are we allowed to now do business with everybody?
Mm.
Free and clear
Mm.
of any kind of discrimination or any kind of struggle in the way?
Mm.
You know, we don't have a military and all, but we don't need one. There are countries all over the world that don't have militaries.
Mm-hmm.
We can have
Yeah.
any kind of school systems we want. We
Mm.
can do anything we want. And if reparations has to come, it's something maybe like that. Now that they get
Yes.
to say, look what we've done. Look what
Yeah.
we've given them. Their own
Yeah.
independence. Well, I think
Yeah.
we definitely repaired them now.
I
You
like
see?
that. Mm-hmm.
Now, and if not that, then it's got to go to the whole, here in America. Now, I'm not saying everybody moves over there because you've got a dual citizenship. You can stay right here, live your life out right here on everything. But you have that option of going there, owning your own land, having your own business, doing business there with African Americans of descendants of slaves.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And you live out your lives there. You create your history and your future there. Now, if it can't work that way, which it really should, it'd be great, but it won't be my idea that creates it. Then you mentioned something about how Omni Berra saw it, like build better schools, better roads, better opportunities in communities. Now, what's going to happen there is you'll hear other communities say, wait a minute, that's not fair. Why are you doing that? And you said, well, it's part of reparations. Yeah, but we don't like that. And we're going to do anything we can to stop it. And now you may have lawsuits against it and things like that, with people who want to object to it because you're treating them now differently than me. And that's discrimination. Remember Baki back in 72 when they tried affirmative action, right? Which seems fair, right? Affirmative action. You know what? We don't get to go to your colleges and stuff. We haven't been, this whole 100-something years. Can we just let a few people through the door? No, that will now make the white people not go. You're going to keep white people from going. 3 or 4, 5 or 6. Can we have that?
Mm-hmm.
So you see, now it's reverse discrimination. So, I know that's long and drawn out, but, I think it's a wonderful idea that we got to convince individuals to to get rid of us, so to speak, or to pay us off, so to speak, you see. Give us the money, let us do our own independent thing. And if you don't want to, you stay right here, dual citizenship. Bang. Go back and forth. Bang.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to get Candace to bring it to all her friends and start preaching about it.
Come on now, let's go. I think that's,
the Black
I would take the land because come on now, Black Republicans for real. Let's go.
They dropped the idea and think about it. These guys, they're running. The Koch brothers, they're eating away. They'll go, that sounds like a good plan.
But don't let these Negroes bring no guns from that over. Otherwise, no. I don't want these Negroes no guns. Go to our Puerto Rico.
We're just saying we wanted our independence too.
That's it. We just want our land. We just want our land. We just want our independence. We can create our own wealth because $1 million.
Those areas are what?
$1 million to barely get you a home in California.
Well, and 20 years to live on.
Come on now.
So and you're going to struggle to make it last that long.
Come on now.
So, we get into the islands. We get into the islands, and I mean,
we said
you have your own independence.
Let's go. That's it. Bam, right there, right there. After that, there should be
3 different locations. The Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. I mean, you got 3 different places.
Yes, I'll come back to visit the homeless infested LA. I'll come back to visit.
Well, because maybe we can bring money to them now and invest without anybody getting in the way.
Yes, because a lot of those homeless people are out there looking like us. You know, they look like us. A lot of the people dealing with the injustice in the mental health system look like us. A lot of people going in and out this crooked court system look like us. And I think, yeah, and I think,
yes,
yeah, and I think that this government has to own up when it pertains to reparations, and not just some aspects, but all aspects.
Yeah.
And this is bigger than PPP
Well,
check and all
there's
that.
precedent for it with
Yeah.
the Jews, precedent with Japan. You see, precedent. It's happened before, and we've paid.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And the law is all about precedent. The law is all about, well, if we've done something in the past, we need to stay and do that again.
Keith, I got about 8 more minutes left with you. And before I end it off, we talked about voting rights. We talked about the history of our people briefly when it pertains to Jim Crow, redlining, segregation. We talked about the George Floyd Policing Act. We talked about what reparations look like for our people. We went full circle in this conversation, and we talked about even the social economic divides and why. But I want to end this conversation off with a little bit of political talk, okay? Because now we're in Sacramento, and you have a district attorney who's failed to prosecute any officer ever during her entire tenure, except for but that was he's already retired and never copped the Golden State Killer. But you also had a DA who's received over $250,000 from police unions during her entire tenure, is running against a guy who's very progressive named who's already in office right now, Rob Bonner, running for his seat, trying to become Attorney General. And then you also have somebody running for district attorney to replace her. You have the lieutenant general, and you also have a new incumbent by the name of Alana Matthews, if I'm saying her name right. I don't think we've seen a Black female district attorney ever in the city of Sacramento. You know, and who is this woman? A lot of people don't know who she is. We've got 5 more minutes left, but I'm liking what I'm seeing from her. She looks like something different. I'm all for uplifting Black women. Malcolm X says the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman, and I think that is true because our Black women have a story like no other. But I also think we need to support our Black women when it comes to these leadership positions more. And there's a way to do that, but I think sometimes we don't know who they are. So I know you probably have a relationship with her. I know you probably know a little bit about her and whatnot. Can you speak about how important this race for district attorney is and who she is?
Absolutely. And I got just a couple of little quick things I want to do before that. You should get the Langston Hughes poem, Negro Mother. All right. Everybody should get that and check it out when it comes to talking about how
love that. Book plugs.
Black women are the most abused. But
yes.
But
and what's the name of that? What's the name of that book?
The Negro Mother.
Negro Mother.
Langston Hughes. Yes. Great playwright or poet. Okay. Let me start off by doing this. Look, first of all, regarding your voting rights, we talked a lot about the rights and preserving them through legislation, but know this, you can vote as long as you are not in prison and on parole. So I'm in county jail, I can vote. I just got out of county jail, I can vote. I got felonies, I got misdemeanors, I can vote as long as I'm not on federal parole or in prison. Okay? Please register to vote. Now, juries can now have felons serve on juries. Now that's a new thing now. How do you get on the jury? Well, register a car, register to vote. So you see, you knock 2 things off, because what better person to judge individuals in jury trials than people who have had felonies or criminal records? See, they can look at life a whole different way. In fact, I believe that you should have all felons do it because they'll know whether this person was a real criminal, whether they were involved in something. They'll know. Okay? It'll be the best to judge. But anyway, it's not that. But understand, I'm a felon. I can serve on a jury. Be proud to. Okay? Some laws have changed. If you are on probation right now, and it went through, and now you're through your second year, and it's a felony, and it's searchable, you can go in, that probation will be terminated. So I got 2 years in on a 5-year probation. It will be terminated. If I got 1 year in on a 3-year misdemeanor probation, it will be terminated. And once terminated, it can be expunged from your record. Please do that. Inquire Keith Staten, inquire on my podcast. We talk about it all the time, which is Courtside on YouTube with Lawman and Carmen B, Fridays at 6 p.m. Courtside with Lawman and Carmen B, Fridays, 6 p.m. All right. So you got to do those things. There's also fees have been overturned. So if you're paying for work project and work furlough, even right now, as of July 1, you shouldn't be paying anymore. And you shouldn't be assessed the fees for the daily stuff anymore. Diversion for misdemeanors. Every misdemeanor now can be diverted. Diverted means do some classes, do this, dismissed. And that's up to a judge. So know these things are changing in our laws, which means people are being progressive. Our legislators are being progressive, which leads me into Alana Matthews. She's a progressive DA. She's one who would support these measures. She has supported Prop 47 and all the other moves in order to clear records and things like that. I've worked with her on expunging records and things like that. I've known her for years. She used to be a DA. Now, listen to what she says about the future and how to handle things from the DA's office. And you'll understand that it's going to be a massive change and that you would want to support her, and you probably should. She would have the best interest in mind of the people. She's shown that through her work. But listen to what she's saying and make the decision for yourself. But most importantly, go vote, go register so that we can have a powerful edge to bring her to the office. So please, play this over and over again. Tell your friends, tell everybody what I'm telling you, because I want the message to get out there that we've got to be very active in the next elections constantly.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, brother man, Keith Staten. I also want to announce our sincere condolences to Robert Pierce Moses, a civil rights activist who died earlier today. He endured beatings in jail while fighting for the Black voter registration drives in the South in 1960s, and later he helped minorities' education and math. He died today at the age of 86. So the Clark family sends their condolences to Robert Moses. And thank you, Attorney Keith, Lawman, and Keith Staten. We appreciate. We love you. Yeah, make sure y'all go out there and inform and educate yourself. Don't believe the hype. Thank you all for tuning in on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram. We appreciate you. Make sure you check out his podcast. The brother is so brilliant. And make sure if you ever need an attorney, you contact Keith Staten. Thank you, Keith, again for joining me. I appreciate you as much love.
Love you, man.
I love you, Mo, man. If you say you love me more than that, you're lying. All right, take it easy, brother. All right.
Take care now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And everybody watching, thank you. Don says excellent discussion. Please repost so we can share. This will be reposted all day, all week, all year. So you guys will be able to have this. Everybody, love everybody. Thank you guys again for tuning in for this Stephon Clark Sunday. Have a wonderful and great rest of the evening. All right.